what's up guys, Bajheera here. So for this video, I'm going to be trying to make a fairly quick 8.3 Arms Warrior guide. I'd like to go over basically the stats, the gear, the essences for both PvE and PvP. But like I said, we're going to try to do it a little bit more quickly because I like to ramble about all things Warrior. But don't want to have another hour-long Warrior guide for you guys this time. So let's get right to it. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to start off with PvE. So things about PvE. For Arms Warriors, you want a ton of haste, because what you're going to be doing is basically trying to spend and generate as much rage as possible to make your cooldowns come up more quickly, to make use of a big Azeroth trait called Test of Might. So what you're going to want to do is probably try to have as close to 30% haste as possible. I don't quite have my stats perfect for that, but 25% haste plus a lot of haste procs can kind of help get that thing done. So what you want to do is have as many Test of Might traits as possible. I got super lucky, and on the PvP box before the raid, I got this big bad boy that has Test of Might, Strike the Anvil, Overwhelming Power, Intimidating Presence. So that's really nice. But what you're going to see with my whole setup is the goal basically is 3 times Test of Might so that you can press Warbreaker, spend a ton of rage as possible with your high haste value, and then you get a huge stack of strength afterwards. I'm talking like 7 to like 8,000 strength. You can probably get more than that if you play better than me, which you probably can. But Test of Might is huge. That's like the trait that you want. So Test of Might plus things like Gathering Storm is good. Strike the Anvil I don't think is the highest DPS increase, but it does make the rotation feel really nice, and I like Strike the Anvil a lot for PvP, so it kind of keeps things rolling like that. Overwhelming Power is also huge to give you haste. But that's like the main thing. I also have a Lord of War in there to make Warbreaker hit like a little bit harder. I have Meticulous Scheming, which I would like to change for something else. Fortunately, the raid drops really, really good Azeroth traits for like every spec. So you're going to see a lot of things that have like Test of Might, Gathering Storm on it, Test of Might, Lord of War, things like that. But this is just kind of what I've got for now. But I have 3 450 traits with Test of Might, or 3 450 pieces with the Test of Might trait, which is like the big deal. So first things first, what you want is triple Test of Might and a lot of haste. That's like the basics. Past that, you can kind of optimize your traits to find what you like, but that's the basics. In terms of talents, this is what I run for PvE. This is like raid spec. I run Skull Splitter. I do double time. If I'm doing Mythic Plus, I'll take Stormbolt so you have a stun for it. You want Fervor of Battle, which is kind of like a strange talent because I don't really use that for PvP ever. But the reason why you want to use it is because it allows you to spend huge chunks of rage constantly by spamming Whirlwind, but it also does a slam at the end of your Whirlwind, and a Whirlwind deals more damage. So it's decent, like, it's a pretty strong filler ability. That's what you want, basically. I like Bounding Stride for mobility. I also sometimes take D-Stance and Raid, just like if you're going to, like, tank a mechanic, you know, you have to, like, run out the Insanity Bomb or whatever. You know, you hop in D-Stance while you're running away, boom, the thing hits, you charge back in, go back to battle, and start doing your damage again. It's just kind of nice because Arms has no self-healing, but it has like a little bit of damage reduction, so you can make use of that. Warbreaker for big-time AoE is sweet. If you want to get zesty, you can take Cleave to spread deep wounds on a bunch of targets, but I think Warbreaker is fairly straightforward, especially if you have Lord of War. Boom, you do like huge Warbreaker hits, which is just good for the deeps, and you're going to be trying to use Warbreaker as much as possible to spam all that rage and to make that Test of Might stack huge. And then you have In for the Kill. So we're talking about haste a lot. Every time you press Warbreaker, bang, you get 10% haste. If something is below 20%, you get 20% haste, which is nice. That's pretty much what you want. Once again, more generation of auto attacks for rage, more rage expenditure for getting your cooldowns back up faster with anger management, which is the other talent that you want, which equals more Test of Might, more damage. That's pretty much what Arms Warrior does, is just cranks huge Warbreaker hits into spending a ton of rage to get a big Test of Might stack. Then you're going to be spending even more rage to try to make your cooldowns come back up faster with anger management. So it's a pretty fun play style. I think it's like a teeny little bit intricate, but not super complicated. So it ended up being a lot of fun. So your rotation is basically the same thing. Hit Mortal Strike every time it's up. Try to use Overpower when you can to make your Mortal Strike hit harder and to do some damage that doesn't spend rage. And then you're going to be filling in with Whirlwind is basically how that works. In terms of Azeroth essences, you have a couple that are good options. The ones that I like, I still like Memory of Lucid Dreams. It just works so well with that whole idea that we've been talking about, right? Warbreaker, spend a ton of rage, get a huge Test of Might stack. And Lucid Dreams allows you to do that by making like your rage generation increase by 100%. It also gives you like a teeny bit of lifesteal, which really not that big of a deal. But the Lucid Dreams minor is also really nice. It refunds you rage. Once again, it doesn't decrease the rage cost required, which is good because you want to spend as much rage as possible. But being refunded rage sort of fits in with that whole idea that we've been talking about this entire time. I think Blood of the Enemy is okay. I think that Essence of Focusing Iris is awesome. And I am actually using Breath of the Dying. Breath of the Dying gets really good when you level it up. It's not leveled up right now. But one of the reasons that I'm using it is because I do need the corruption resistance to be increased, because I have a pretty nice little corruption in this this bracer right here. But before we go to the corruption stuff, you do want to try... You have options in terms of what you want to use. Like, for example, right now, fighting like the second to last boss in the raid has a ton of like aberrations. So for example, you could probably drop some nice little what's it called, the purification protocol on that. So there might be situations where you want to use other talents, right? Like maybe Iris for like the big destructo beam for the AoE. But I think in general Lucid Dreams feels really, really good, and I like that it sort of fits into that style. And I don't really use Lucid Dreams for anything else, so this is kind of like a cool time to use it. But I like this for secondary stats. If you have a bunch of people in your raid using World Vein, you can use that too. That's also a fun option. Things like Conflict and Strife just add versatility to you, just add damage. That's cool. Crucible Flame is okay, but this is what I'm using right now. And you can kind of play around with a lot of these, but this is a combination that I've been enjoying. And depending on how many secondary stats you need, you can swap this out for primary stat if you wanted to use World Vein. But you got some options is the idea. Once again, my idea for this is to bring you into the general idea of what ARMS PvE is about, which is generating rage, Warbreaker, spending a ton of rage, getting your cooldowns back up faster. Just a rage generation, rage spending, anger management, war breaking machine, basically, is kind of how that works. Let's see. So in terms of corruptions, this is the best one that I've found so far. I think that for PvE, I think Infinite Stars keeps getting nerfed, but I think it might still be good. The one that I want is one that summons tentacles. It might be called like Unending Void or something. I need to find that one, and we will probably dig into corruptions a little bit more as we find better corruptions. But this one is pretty cool. Void Ritual is like the one that you get on your first piece of corruption ever, and it gives you like a teeny little bit of stats. This one, it gives you a bunch of stats. It's like 600 stats at the end of the stack, which is nuts. So that combined with everything we've been talking about with generating rage, spending rage, getting a ton of strength from Test of Might, like that's really nice for that. And I've been doing pretty good damage as ARMS. I've been doing like a lot of times, if it's just like a single target battle, we'll be doing like 40 to 42k DPS, and if we can cleave, it probably is more than that. So I feel pretty good about that. It's not insane, but it's pretty decent. And once again, my gear is like okay. My stats aren't perfect, but the idea is to have a ton of haste, and then go for crit, and then things like versatility, mastery, and strength are things that are maybe aren't like quite as important, but haste, then crit, and everything else. This is basically kind of how that works. I think with PvE handled, we can quickly swap over to PvP. So that's mostly just going to be a talent change. Bang! And this information, once again, we're going to breeze over this very quickly, because this information is contained in my 8.2 ARMS guide, more at length. But this is the talents that I really never change this, unless I want to go in for the kill. Avatar is really good, especially if you have a Bastion of Might trait, which I do. But you definitely could very easily go into in for the kill if you wanted to. But how things change for ARMS is, here's the talent changes. I like these honor talents quite a bit. The things that are going to deviate from what I talked about in the other ARMS Warrior guide is you really, I think, at this point, for me, done some testing, you really want to go triple crushing assault. That's like the big trait. So you want those slams to crank. Just huge slam procs, annihilate people. I think you really want one strike to anvil. It really makes your rotation feel a lot better. At least one Gathering Storm is really, really nice for the strength and the movement speed in Blade Storm. And then a Bastion of Might or a Lord of War is kind of other thing I'm looking for, right? Like if you want to use in for the kill, maybe a Lord of War is fine. But if you want to use Avatar, Bastion of Might gives you like a little bit of defensive and offensive bonus, right? Because you have Ignore Pain, which makes you absorb a bunch of damage. It gives you like a little shield, which will make a difference, and then it also buffs your mastery by a fair amount, so your bleeds are hitting harder. But that's the idea for PvP when you're looking for your Azerite traits, is triple crushing assault. That's what you want. For PvE, triple Test of Might. For PvP, triple crushing assault. Let's kind of simplify it there. In terms of stats, instead of wanting a bunch of haste and then crit, what you really want is a ton of haste and then versatility. So just now, pretty much before this coming season, they nerfed tank trinkets, because before what you wanted to do is wear double tank trinkets. Now things are kind of up for grabs. So I have pretty beefy item level Maledict's trinket that I could use. I could also put on just more versatility with like a Notorious Gladiator's badge. I could use a Safeguard if I wanted to have that shield proc. But what you want is you want at least 20% haste and then basically stack verse. The balance of versatility to haste is kind of up to you. If you like a little bit of a faster playstyle, which I do, you can go for that. But you want to have as many pieces of gear with haste, verse, and a socket that you socket versatility in as possible. And I have quite a few. And that's something that's going to persist through this season as well, as the haste verse stack. I might end, like in the beginning of the season, test out some little bit higher crit values and stuff, but I think the haste and the verse is really important for a warrior, because you want to have, you know, once again, you want to be able to generate good rage. Haste also stacks your kind of scales with your deep wounds, which is nice. Oh, and you really want to Gedaku. In terms of gear, that should be mentioned in general. You really want to Gedaku. Gedaku is better than a lot of the raid weapons, although the last boss of the raid drops a ridiculous weapon. It's very expensive in terms of corruption, but if you're looking for a weapon, this one is a pretty gnarly one. Devastation's Hour, craziness. But besides that, Gedaku still outperforms a lot of that stuff. And for PvP, you'll notice I have no corruption on my character for PvP. I think some of the things that might be worth it in terms of corruption for PvP are the one that spawns a tentacle. Other than that, I don't think I'm super impressed. Infinite Stars, once again, keeps getting nerfed. And it's like, you have to stack it up on one target, and sometimes you're going to be swapping around in PvP, so something to consider. But in terms of corruptions for PvP, you really do want that tentacle. Outside of that, you might not want to be too corrupted. So that's something that's like the gear setup right here. In terms of Azerite essences, you're pretty much always going to play Conflict and Strife main. And then I usually stack the ones that gave me like versatility, like Memory Lucid Dreams for procs a little bit of a heal. I love Vision of Perfection for the slightly reduced Bladestorm cooldown. I like the healing isn't that big of a deal, but having Bladestorm come up more often is awesome. They did just buff Vision of Perfection, so that makes it proc more. So I might goof around with Vision of Perfection in like BG, something like that. I think it's kind of sketchy to use it in PvP because you do want to have... You're stacking a high versatility value because you have no self-healing, but you want to be able to like be durable, right? So you have D-stance if you're getting hit, and then whenever you get stunned by a rogue, you want to have as much versatility as possible and as much damage reduction as possible. So I usually used this last season, and then you could throw something else in there. Like you could use Breath of the Dying, and especially when it's like higher level and it procs more often when a target is low. Finishing power would be amazing. So I think Breath of the Dying might actually be sick, and then you could even maybe use a small corruption if you wanted to. Blood of the Enemy is probably fine. Even just things like Purification Protocol gives you like a little bit of healing. I don't think it's worth. I really think it's probably better to use Breath of the Dying, just have this leveled up. I'm just going to go ahead and just like put my flag in that. Like Breath of the Dying, level this up. It's going to be insane, I think. Especially because the extra procs from the minor trait heal you. Like this thing could be so crazy, you know? So that's probably going to be something that we're going to want to look for. So I'd probably use this setup for PvP in terms of little essences there. But if there's anything else we need to talk about, I think rotation doesn't really change too much, right? So the rotation that I went over, I mean, Mortal Strike is, you want to be hitting that as much as possible, keep your Demon Boons up. With this, you're going to be wanting to press your Sudden Death Executes whenever they're up, and then Overpower to keep your Mortal Strike buffed. Don't spend any rage on that. But I could talk about I could go do rotation on a dummy, and this video will be an hour long. But I feel like we've done a pretty good job of giving you guys the basics, so let's just review, right? So for PvE, you want to have Triple Test of Might, a lot of haste. For PvP, you want to have Triple Crushing Assault, a lot of haste, a lot of verse. In terms of essences, for PvP, Conflict Major, some of these things, you can definitely play around with these to see what you like. I like Vision of Perfection, Memory Lucid Dreams, and Breath of the Dying. You could, put some, like a little bit more of a PvE style for some Essence of the Focusing Iris for more haste. You got a lot of options, especially as this is like a little bit low level. You could just crank more haste, and then they'll let you invest more verse in your gear set there. But for PvE, Memory Lucid Dreams is my favorite. I like Blood of the Enemy as well. I always have Breath of the Dying right here just to make sure that we don't get way over corrupted. And then we'll have the Essence of Focusing Iris just for the haste. So hopefully that sets you up pretty nicely for arms. As soon as I end this video, I'm going to fire up the Fury one as well, because I think the Fury one follows a very similar pattern in terms of PvE. But before we break down Fury way too much, let's go ahead and end the arms guide. Hopefully this brief overview that I attempted to make helps you guys get started. I'm having a lot of fun with arms in PvE right now, and obviously it's still kind of like the go-to spec for PvP. if you need any idea about what the raid drops in terms of the gear, you can definitely look at my sort of gear overview that I posted as well. But like I said, 8.3 has been a blast. I got a lot to talk about, so you're gonna hopefully see more videos like this in the future. Definitely be sure to show this video some love if it helped you out, or if you enjoyed it. And stay tuned for the Fury guide coming very, very soon. Peace.